Halloween. For many Christians, it becomes a point of tension. While many people remember trick-or-treating in their youth and that fun of dressing in costume, the emphasis on darkness, death, and the spirit world, strikes them as explicitly anti-Christian. Now add to this the pressure of parents whose children are left out of the festivities enjoyed by many of their friends, and it raises questions. What should we do as believers? And what are the real origins of Halloween anyway? Well, hi all, I'm Lenny Esposito, and on this week's episode, I, with my Apologetics.com colleagues, take a deep dive into the history and traditions of All Hallowed Eve. We'll look at both the pagan practices and the Christian holiday that fuses October 31st, and uncover facts not usually understood when good people debate their positions. I'll also show how the modern holiday really has more to do with selling merchandise than celebrating Samhain. And finally, we provide some concrete guidelines for Christians and parents as how to approach this day in a more godly way, in a more thoughtful way. Now, there's an awful lot here, so be sure to listen to it all. And that's coming up on this. Come, let us reason together.
Welcome to the Apologetics.com radio show where we challenge believers to think and thinkers to believe. Tonight we're going to be talking about Halloween. All right, specifically this. Is it okay for Christians to celebrate Halloween? And I'm loosely defining celebrate here as in handing out candy to trick-or-treaters, putting on a costume, or putting up scary decorations around the house or place of work. So as Christians, we might even think the whole thing is harmless, since we're only enjoying the cultural activity of getting to know our neighbors by walking up to homes, donning a costume, ringing their doorbell, and saying, trick or treat. So what's the big deal about this? I know Christians are divided over this. Could we remain a faithful follower of Christ and still be involved in things Halloween? Well, tonight we're going to be talking about that, and to help me with that, I've brought my friends, my faithful friends who are here in the studio with us tonight. Lenny Esposito, how are you doing?
Doing well. I'm glad to be here. It's always an interesting topic, something that I think people don't know enough about and should know a little bit more.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that. And Dr. Jacob Daniel, how are you doing? You haven't been on the show for like a couple months, I think.
It's been a while. It's good to be back again in the studio, Harry. And I should mention that it was amazing to be on the campus of the California State University yesterday.
Oh, yes.
We had fun time there, just praying for students. And yeah, that was
really did.
Great time of ministry there.
All sorts of people that visited our table, and we just offered them prayer. You know, we just asked them, "What do you need prayer for?" And we had all sorts of interesting people. Yeah.
Surprisingly, I didn't see any evidence of Halloween being celebrated there. Right? I didn't see anything there.
Unless
maybe they're
those
busy.
are just normal outfits. I saw some, but I figured it's just normal for them to wear horns or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Could be.
You know, I haven't given out the numbers yet, but someone wanting to call us already? Okay, well, because that's what I put on Facebook. I said, give us a call. And this is going to be a caller-driven show, all right? And the number to dial, if you want to join our conversation, you might have a question about Halloween. Maybe you're a parent and you're trying to navigate the tension between having your kids participate in what might seem like a harmless thing versus wanting to disciple your kid to be, Christlike, to teach them values, to teach them biblical truths. So that might be a tension you're feeling right now. Or maybe you're just a young person and you love the whole putting on a costume and attending parties. I don't know. And you might have a question or comment for us. The number to call is 888-995-5552. Again, that number is 888-995-5552. And the topic for tonight is it okay for Christians to celebrate Halloween? Before we get into that, actually, let's do a little bit of history. Now, Lenny, why don't you tell our listeners about your ministry, Come Reason, and you've written an article and you've researched this topic pretty deeply.
Yeah, so Come Reason Ministries has been around since the mid-'90s, and one of the things that we do is deal with issues of culture and understanding. Halloween was something that, again, a lot of people didn't understand, so it intrigued me. I felt that same tension. Everybody wants to have an excuse to dress up and do this fun kind of stuff. I trick-or-treated as Batman as a kid. I still remember that kind of stuff. But you start to ask yourself, what's it all about? And you also see the macabre kind of overtures, and you start to be a little uncomfortable with that. But realize that the first tip-off in all of this is the name itself, Halloween. Halloween is an English contraction. It's All Hallows Eve. It's the Holy Evening. It's the evening before All Saints' Day. And the Roman Catholic Church recognized November 1st as All Saints' Day and November 2nd as All Souls' Day. They actually, before the Protestant Revolution, so in the medieval period, this was considered one of the holy days of obligation, one of the days that you should, as a good practicing Catholic, go to church. And so those kinds of days always would show up the evening before, just like we have Christmas Eve. Yeah. So we had Hallowed Eve, and Halloween, the name, means holy evening. That's just what it means. It was set by Pope Boniface IV. They used to celebrate the death of the martyrs and then the death of the saints. It kind of expanded on May 13th. But they found that a lot of people in a lot of different cultures more recognized their departed on the end of the year and the end of summer, because it was after the harvest season, right? Israel, for example, the Rosh Hashanah happens in September, October as well, right? Because it's the end of the harvest season, the start of the winter, everything starts new and the cycle begins again. So this is common. This was common in the Celt tradition, and they would have a day or a time that they would recognize as summer's end. They called it Samhain. That's a literal translation from that Gaelic, summer's end. And that's all that meant. It was a calendar marking. And you'd notice that, okay, we're getting prepared for the new year. And so what the Roman Catholic Church did is, because most people felt that as the days grew darker, most people believed that there really were spirits, there really were souls, there really were immaterial entities that we couldn't see. They saw it in kind of a pseudo-materialistic framework. So they believed that the veil, the night of the thin veil is what it's called, they believed that the veil got thinnest during this point in time. So they would focus on the death of people. And what the Roman Catholic Church did was say, well, we'll move our celebration and we'll codify it into November 1st and November 2nd, since that's when most people are thinking about this kind of thing anyway. This is where we'll place it. Samhain wasn't necessarily October 31st. It was in this general period, and it might have moved around. It wasn't like they didn't have strict calendars at that point in time. So really what Halloween began as is a Roman Catholic recognition of the dead in order to accommodate the groups of people whom they've converted, the English in the 600s, 700s, the Irish with St. Patrick, the Visigoths and the people through northern Germany and all of that stuff. As Catholicism spread, they were trying to get the idea of celebrating the martyrs and the dead, and what they did was they say, well, since people are thinking about it at this time of year, we'll just move it to this time of year. And that's where the date comes from. That's not the American tradition of Halloween. The American tradition of Halloween has a long and crooked path that goes through a rebellion in England. The Irish potato famine drives a lot of the Irish people to America, who liked the idea of a date where kids can kind of roam free and cause a little bit of stir up a little bit of havoc, burn a guy in effigy, right? Guy Fawkes Day.
Hold on that one,
yeah.
Lenny. We'll get to that. But so that's the American side.
Yeah.
And I love how you started that history going back in the 8th century. But I'm interested to know, we can continue this discussion later about how many, including myself, assume that it was just a pagan holiday, but that's debatable. We're not exactly sure. But before you get there, though,
okay.
I know we have a caller. He's actually calling from New York.
Oh, yeah.
I know this guy. I'm guessing it's the Julio that we know. And I think he was on the show. Were you on the show with Julio months ago, or was it with you? Jacob, okay. Well, I'm going to bring Julio on. Julio, you're on the air with apologetics.com. You're the Julio I know, right? Julio Negron?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm Julio from Wake 'em Up Ministry.
That's right.
Oh, yes.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
How are you?
It's like past 3 a.m. your time, right?
Yeah. So it's 3, and it's funny because I'm, laying down in bed, and then I use the bathroom, and I'm still up, and I go on Facebook. I see Harry's post.
I hope the monsters are not keeping you awake.
I prayed a little bit, and yeah, man, I'm like, I got to get in on this call.
Yes,
that's great.
Okay, Julio, what's your question or comment?
Yeah. So growing up, I went to a church growing up as a child, a Spanish legalistic church, and it was almost like all Hispanic people, and they believed in just being different from the world. Don't celebrate, don't associate with much of the world. So I seen Halloween as as a very bad thing growing up as a child. And it's like you can't even eat candy that day. You can't even.
Yeah.
You can't. It was like if a teacher tells you, "Here goes a little bit of candy," or something, you got to say no. You got to stand up and say no because you're representing God.
Wow.
So those kind of things. And so then for many years when I really, I wasn't really serving the Lord at a young age, but when I really started serving the Lord, it became, don't do anything, that was the mindset.
Yeah.
And then the last few years, obviously, my heart or anybody that I'm talking to about this, not that we celebrate Halloween per se, we're dressing up in costumes and scaring people and all these other things, but we currently at a point now where we use it as an opportunity to share the gospel. So we will actually share literature of the gospel with cool covers of either comics or they'll have something like a pumpkin on the front of it, and then it gets into the gospel. But myself and the church we go to, we agreed, the leadership, we're encouraging people from our congregation to now engage on people that could potentially go to their door.
Yeah.
Where we're giving them gospel tracts. Some of us, some people, depending on their conviction, tape a piece of candy on it or not. But there's no other day throughout the year where people are going to come to your door.
Right.
And it's an amazing opportunity to, be able to do that. And then with that being done, at our church, we're also, this year, we're going to have a fellowship. They call it like a harvest fest. And we'll be doing, games for the kids and stuff like that. Nothing really scary or demonic or anything like that. And then people do come from the outside, non-believers. And so we'll do the same thing. We'll give them gospel literature. They'll partake, and then we'll let them know about our church services. So we use it as an opportunity like that.
I think that's valid. I live in a neighborhood that attracts trick-or-treaters like nothing I've ever seen. So what our church does is we ask the parishioners to buy candy bars, full-size candy bars. We want to stick in people's mind. We put scriptures on each one of them, and we sit out in front and play guitar and do worship songs and hand out candy. And last year we handed out almost 800 candy bars. I mean, that's how many people come.
Oh, wow.
And so it's like it's an outreach event, right? This is what people are, and they love it. People love it. And some people, young parents, who are Christians, just thank us for actually bringing some light into the whole thing. Yeah. So
you know what? It made me think. I don't know, Julio, if you might agree with me on this, but sure. I think I know of a church. I forget who the pastor was, but I encourage their church members to actually stay home during Halloween because the purpose was to be salt and light in the community, to actually hand out candy and whatever, and do like what you guys have just mentioned, like share the gospel through maybe tracts, tack it on a piece of literature, but be there. And I do see the value of that, just being in your community, because, for the longest time, we were involved with our church doing Harvest Fest, all right? And maybe our community just knew during Halloween our home would be just empty. And a part of me had always been thinking, I wonder if they think we're just like a bunch of killjoy, if they don't know we're actually putting together a Harvest Fest at our church. But I see the value of that. I see the point in just being neighborly. So anyways, hey, Julio, thanks for calling, man. And
you got it, man. God bless you guys.
Yes.
And, man, keep it going.
Okay, thank you. Keep us in prayer.
Yeah.
Julio, thanks for calling. He is with Wake 'em Up Ministries. Look him up. All right. If you want to join our conversation, you might have a question about Halloween, especially if you are a believer and you struggle with that. You think it's just pervasive, and you might even think, what's wrong with putting on a costume and going door to door saying trick or treat, especially if you have young ones who want to get into a costume, or maybe they want to make their own and they see their friends having fun. What is a Christian parent to do? The number to call is 888-995-5552. Again, that number is 888-995-5552. All right, so Lenny, we know that the celebration of Samhain? Samhain. It just means summer's over, right? Or end of summer.
Summer's end, yeah.
And would you say that that's very much similar to our Thanksgiving celebrations?
Kind of,
right?
There's again, they aren't believers. It's a pre-Christian society, so there are, sacrifices to deities, maybe offerings of fruit and harvest of the field, but there is no deity of Samhain. It was the time of year that you recognize that the bounty was in, and you're preparing for winter. So you have to store up some of this stuff. And again, they felt that there was a thinning of the veil between what you normally see in the world and what was not transparent, or the dead. Also idea of other spiritual beings. In the English, it translates into fairies, or as well as demons, angels, that kind of idea. And when England gets Christianized, the populace still carries this throughout the medieval period, so well into Christendom, well into to 1000 AD, 1200 AD. They still believe that there is a point in time where that kind of spiritual activity is more sensitive and increases. And this is the point in time of year that happens. At the same time, one of the reasons why All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day is put together was because the Roman Catholic Church and the doctrine of purgatory. Mm-hmm. So the Roman Catholic Church believes that every soul, even if you're saved, you have to work off some of your sins, right? And that's what purgatory is, purgatory and limbo. You don't hear much about limbo anymore. They've kind of pushed that off to the side. Yeah. But it's an idea that some of the unrepentant sins, the things you didn't confess, you're going to have to work through. And how you get out of purgatory is through the prayers of saints. So what people would have done is they would take turnips and they would hollow out the turnips and they'd put a candle in the turnips. This would be the lantern that they would use to carry from door to door. And they would ask people, do you have any food or any offerings? And if you give me a little bit of your soul cake, it was a tradition to make this kind of oatmeal and treacle cake, right? Oatmeal, sugary kind of thing. If you give me some of that cake, then I will say a prayer for one of your beloved ones, and it'll help them speed through purgatory. And that became part of the tradition where people would go. This is kind of the first types of door-to-door kind of things that would happen. Then the Protestant Reformation comes in, and the idea of purgatory is a non-starter. So people start to put the kibosh on purgatory, and there's a fight in England between the Roman Catholics and the Protestants, right? There's tension in that. This is where you have Mary, Queen of Scots, trying to reestablish Roman Catholicism, Bloody Mary. And then you have Queen Elizabeth conquering her. Then you have King James after that. Well, the Catholics wanted to blow up King James. They had a plot that they bought a building right next to Parliament. They filled it with like 32 barrels of gunpowder, and they were going to light it up. But somebody leaked this information, and they caught a man named Guy Fawkes trying to light the fuse. And they caught him before he got it, and under pain of torture, he confessed and things like that. So what King James did was he says, we're going to celebrate Protestantism and the victory over Catholicism, and we're going to build a bonfire on the anniversary of this. Every November 5th, we'll have a bonfire, and we'll have an effigy of the Pope at the top of it, and we'll burn the whole thing up because the English are sporting guys like this, right? So that's what they did, and it became Guy Fawkes Day, and people would start to wear masks you see the famous Guy Fawkes masks, and then they would start to kids would say, hey, this is a time where we can burn bonfires and get rowdy and march through the streets with people in effigy that we don't like, and so there was this kind of rumspragen kind of rowdiness, hey, it's a day for revelry, as the populists tend to do, right?
Sure.
We have St. Patrick's Day, but people are not pious on St. Patrick's Day. They just use it as an excuse to drink green beer.
Right.
So that's the modern equivalent to what was going on.
Right.
And that Guy Fawkes celebration sticks because you can still do that and not be like, oh, I'm not part of the Catholic Church and celebrating All Saints Day, but I still get to have my party. So that stays within Irish culture and English culture for quite some time. When the potato famine hits in 1848, a lot of those Irish come over here, and they continue that kind of a celebration. And the storekeepers start to notice that like all the masks start to sell out in mid-October in the mid and late 1800s because you had this huge wave of Irish immigrants. And they start to say, we can capitalize on this. Maybe we start marketing masks and start allowing this stuff to happen so that we can build on it. So we start to see the commercialization of the celebration. Then in the 1930s, in the era where depression is happening, kids start to say, we don't want to just be raucous and rebellious. We're going to start asking people, hey, give me a piece of candy or give me a penny, and you won't find your outhouse on the top of your, wagon or something like that. And so it's not until the 1930s that you really start taking this idea of the true American trick-or-treat tradition that starts to spit in. But when you start to look at all of this together, you start to see that really the paganism that we talk about is actually a 20th century connection. And what Nicholas Rogers, who is a scholar who's written on this, had said was the two groups that actually popularized the idea of Halloween being tied to paganism, one were the mid to late 20th century Wiccans. When Wicca was starting to grow in popularity after Aleister Crowley and things like that, they said, we're going back to nature. And they just assumed that this is what Druids would do. And they felt that they used that same excuse that there's this natural aura that makes us closer to everything. And then the other group that really tied Halloween to paganism was evangelical Christians who said, you got to stay away from that Satanist stuff. Right. But you don't read that in the 19th century. Nobody thought of it that way. So it's actually a modern contingency. Now, it is true that because we talked about death and monster movies in the 1930s start to make their rise, Frankenstein and Wolfman and all Dracula and all that stuff, that becomes really popular in the early 20th century as well. So that gets attached to the Hallowed Eve celebration, the idea of dead and skeletons, things like that. That all starts to blend together into this modern concept of scary is part of Halloween. But again, this is all a 20th century American enterprise. It's like you have all these different ingredients that all get mixed together, and then what happens is the modern American movies and television shows now kind of formalize this, and everybody knows that this is what Halloween is because we've seen it in all the movies, we've watched it on all the popular series, and now we have a cohesive idea of Halloween that is then spit out to the rest of the world.
Hey, thanks for that history lesson, Lenny. Yeah, you've done your homework there. So in many ways then, we're not actually sure how you're saying how the Druids celebrated.
No, because the problem with the Druids is they were all pre-literate. In other words, they didn't leave any writings behind. They do have some poems that they would teach each other by rote, by memory. This is how the Druids were the priestly class of the Celts. So they did have specific poems that they would talk about, but none of them talk about sacrificing people, for example. Right. And a couple of them talk about Samhain, but they just talk about it as a day of remembrance and a day of celebration for the harvest. They don't talk about anything macabre. The Romans, however, who were the enemies, right? When you hear the term the barbarians are at the gate, okay, the Celts were the barbarians. These were the guys that the Romans were talking about. And the Romans were in England, right? The Hadrian's Wall. Right. And when the Romans talk about them, they say how uncivilized they are. They're barbarians. Yeah. And the Romans say, they do all of these ugly things. They'll cut off people's heads. They'll impale, the stuff that people did back then, but they would really paint the Celts with a negative picture. So what we know of them is the few records we have of the Romans, and then later a few Christians who went in to evangelize them. But again, we know them, we know the historical record only from their adversaries, not from their own writings. So it's really hard to tell. Yeah. But we don't see in any of their poetry or anything like that, anything that says
there's no worship to a particular deity.
There's no deity that they're
Celtic
worshiping
deity.
Specifically during that time. Okay. No.
Well, I know we've got a caller online, but we're also going to be up against a station break. So caller, Mahim from Boyle Heights, hang in there. We will get to your call. But before we get on to our break, I just want to remind our listeners that we are supported entirely by your generous donations. And if you find our shows valuable and wish to see it continue, please support us by liking and sharing this on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and other social media outlets. You can also help us with our radio costs by going to our website, www.apologetics.com, and click the donate button. Any amount helps. Your partnership will help us remain on the air. And I believe I hear the music right now, so we will be right back after a few words from the station. All right, gentlemen, welcome back to the Apologetics.com radio show, the second half hour. It's a show where we challenge believers to think and thinkers to believe. I'm Harry Edwards, your host for this evening, and joining me live in the studio tonight are my good friends Lenny and Jacob. And we have a caller on the line. So I'm going to bring Mahim from Boyle Heights. I hope I pronounced your name just right. Mahim.
Yes,
Did I do it right?
Perfect. Yes.
All right. So, thanks for being on the show. Do you have a question for us?
Thank you. Oh, yes. So this is a bit of a debate back in our club, our Christian club in school. But the question was, is it okay for us to dress up in characters of the Bible of that time versus, not participating in that at all?
I kind of like that. That's one way to redeem Halloween, right? Jacob and I have been talking about ways to redeem this holiday, but what are you guys' thoughts on that?
One of our dear friends, Dr. Kevin Lewis, just posted on our Facebook saying, how you could dress up like Luther and go to your neighbor's door and complain. When they open the door, you can then argue with them about their false beliefs. So definitely, yeah. If it works for the kingdom, why not? I
thought you were going to say nail the thesis on their forehead or something when they open the door.
Yeah. No, I think as Christians, we definitely need to be prudent as well. We read in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 22, abstain from any appearance of evil. So we got to be prudent and we got to be careful about how we appear when it comes to celebrations of this kind as well. That we emphasize the fact that the light has taken over the darkness. We're the children of light. And in so doing, if we dress up like one of the characters of the Bible, and that gives us an opportunity to share the good news of the gospel, I would say definitely, why not?
I like that, Jacob. Mahim, what Bible character were you thinking of dressing up with?
Oh, that's funny. I wasn't going to dress up. Actually, that's hilarious because I was actually, it was my idea to do this, and then I flipped and I said, "Oh, this must be bad." So that's why hearing that is really refreshing.
Well, we've heard.
I would dress up as David, of course. Even though David was quite dirty at the time.
Yeah.
But David was, David, his humility and his that ability to cry out and be.
Hey, I would challenge you to dress up as John the Baptist.
Camel
hair, yeah. Oh my goodness.
Get a couple of rubber grasshoppers, just put them on a plate.
And
there
some honey,
go.
yeah.
I was crazy. It's wonderful. I love it.
Hey, Mahim, thanks for your call. Appreciate you, man.
It brings a secondary question, though. You have folks like C.S. Lewis, who in the Narnia books, talks about magic, talks about witches, talks about things like that. And we don't say that C.S. Lewis is somehow celebrating evil or paganism in so doing. I think, with folks like Lewis and Tolkien, they recognize that these are kind of allegories or illustrations of a larger world, and it becomes important to do that. I personally don't think I would want I, for example, wouldn't let my kids dress up as demons or anything that celebrates that dark side. But if they want to dress up as Frodo Baggins, I don't have a problem with that. Matter of fact, one of the things that, because again, our neighborhoods go nuts. We have so many kids. I mean,
it's always been like that in your neighborhood.
As long as I've been there, we have one neighbor who projects, it's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown movie on his garage door. All the neighbors are out with hot cocoa in different tables, and they're all
it's festive. I know, I love it.
It's huge, and so I have orange lights on my house. They're kind of Christmas lights, but I have orange lights on my house, and I have a spider's web with a spider, but I have a Frodo at the bottom of it. So this is Shelob who's coming after Frodo. And so you do that kind of stuff. You can,
I would say we also need some discernment as well, because as you mentioned, there's another side to this very festival as well, that there are a lot of people who see it more in terms of promoting darkness and evil and occult. Because one of my arguments is that, because we need to be careful as well, because I see a lot of people who have come from that side of the world, like who were into occult and doing all sort of magical things and indulging in demonic things, when they have come back to Christ, I've heard their warning that it's not merely because there's so much we don't have much clarity in terms of the origins of these festivals and stories behind it and the Christian values, whatever that might be. So there is that side too. So we need to be careful because this could also signify something that we don't want to. So what we need is to redeem that which is good. And I think this is a great opportunity for parents to teach their kids which way to go when it comes to these celebrations.
Well, one of the interesting things about this that people don't talk about is, again, the initial focus on the early church martyrs, which was the real seed, the real genesis. And if you read Hebrews 11, the Hall of Faith, it's very clear that we are to remember those who have gone before us. That's what the Hall of Faith is all about. So Hebrews 11, Hebrews 12 tells us that we need to reflect on these people who have given their lives for Christ. That is a great way to redeem this holiday because you don't want it to simply lapse into something that it's not. For example, another example is Japanese Christmas. Now, Japan is a non-Christian nation. They have less than 2% of their population are Christian. Yet that Christmas is a huge holiday for them. What's interesting about Christmas is a huge holiday for them. One of their traditions is everybody has to go and eat Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yes.
Now, why is that?
Colonel Sanders is their Santa Claus.
It is.
Yeah.
Why? Because in the 1980s, an American who was stationed in Japan was feeling sad. He was away from home. He wouldn't have the traditional Christmas turkey dinner, and you can't find turkey in Japan. They don't have, right? It's just not the bird there. Right. So the closest he could get was Kentucky Fried Chicken, and he got some friends over, and it started to become a tradition. And the Japanese, who started to become more and more westernized, especially in the 80s, would watch American television, and they would say, well, we want to celebrate Christmas too. But what they found is they started celebrating it almost the way we celebrate New Year's Eve. It became an idea of parties, right? It was all of the secular trappings of Christmas with none of the meaning of Christ. And what's sad is, and I actually wrote an article on this, make sure you're not celebrating a Japanese Christmas, because a lot of people will do that. They'll buy the gifts, they'll put up the tree, but there's no Jesus there. And we want to make sure that that's not the case either. So just as Jesus can be completely missing from Christmas, the devil can be completely missing from Halloween, but the point is to put God in the middle of both.
Yeah.
Right,
and that's the issue.
And that was one of my arguments on our way coming here, that we can call Christmas Christian, we can call Easter Christian, we can call even Thanksgiving Christian. Are we there where we can call Halloween as Christian?
Right.
No. If not, I think we're
not there yet. Yes,
we're not there yet.
But it could be.
But as church,
and it was.
It was
used to
too,
be.
yeah.
So it needs to be redeemed, and I think church needs to step up and strategize in terms of how do we do that, bringing it back from the world of commercialization.
But even Lenny, you mentioned, even at its worst understanding, it recognized the supernatural.
It did.
And that's a huge thing. So however we treat that is another story, but it did acknowledge that there is an afterlife, and it's a big thing.
Which is a common thing for people around the world.
That's true.
So
exactly.
Halloween is very much a Western thing, right? Just it's celebrated here. It's being commercialized now because of media and everything in other parts of the world, but not as major as it is here. But there are other way, which is, like in India, there is just one celebration coming on the 30th of this month, right? The day before Halloween. It's exactly the copy of Halloween. It's, I don't know, it's some kind of coincidence, but that happens at the same time. They also remember the evil spirits and how they've been defeated by the good and things like that. It's a common thing. And I think that needs to be redeemed, and we need to bring in Christ as the Redeemer, as the one who has taken victory over all these powers.
Well, the common even the Druids would build the bonfires in order to help thwart or stave off any evil spirits or loved ones who haven't moved on or what have you, all of that kind of stuff. And again, that's traditional in most cultures, even the Egyptians, you have to pay off your dead relatives so that they can travel on to the next life and things of this nature. So it's kind of something that's endemic to humanity, especially in what we would call an enchanted culture. And again, within medieval Europe and medieval England, they lived in a highly enchanted culture where they would believe that a lot of stuff that's happening could be due to spirits, due to spiritual beings, however they understood those. And so they were much more sensitive to that, and they were looking to cope with it. And that's kind of where the supernatural aspect of Halloween starts to get attached to these holidays.
Yeah. Hey, if you're just listening right now, the topic we've been talking about for the last 40 minutes is Halloween. Specifically, is it okay for Christians to celebrate Halloween? We want to hear from you, and so the number to dial is 888-995-5552. Again, that number is 888-995-5552. You might be a parent, and we are wondering how you navigate that delicate balance between your kids wanting to go full on, celebrate and embrace Halloween, while at the same time you're trying to instill biblical values into your kids and helping them discern what is good, what is right, what is pure, like in Philippians 4:8, right? So if you're a parent, we're just curious. Now, I know, Lenny, you're a parent. You're of grown kids now.
Yeah.
You just became a parent, Jacob. So at some point, this is going to be an issue for you, especially, Jacob. I'm wondering, let's pretend your daughter is now like 5 or 6 years old, and she's seeing her friends all dressed up and go, "Daddy, are we going to go trick-or-treating tonight?" What are you going to tell her?
You're scaring me, Harry.
I know. You got to be thinking about these things already.
I think it's not that. It comes down to how we communicate with our children, right, and how we train them and teach them. I think it's not just with Halloween. It's with anything else. Even if you're sending them out with their friends. In today's culture, talk about gender issues, talk about, racial issues, talk about all those. I mean, you have to really train them to be able to actually bring in the biblical perspective in which you're going to be training them. Mm-hmm. So I think that's true with Halloween as well. It would come down to it's not whether you do it, how you do it, right? And when you... and taking that as an opportunity as well to, as we were saying here, to how we can actually promote the fact that we serve a living God who is the light of the world.
You mentioned a while ago the whole idea of redeeming things, because God is about redeeming things, right? And but the challenge we have as a church is we're not unified in all of this. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we have Harvest Fest, sometimes we have Trunk or Treat, but we don't hear a lot of sermons from the pulpit about redeeming things for the Lord, right? Mm-hmm. And wouldn't that be an amazing universal church project?
That'd be great.
To redeem Halloween. So I was just reading, these facts are interesting, but by the end of this season, when Halloween is over, we will have spent as Americans $11.6 billion with a B.
It's the second, other than Christmas, it's the second most marketable holiday of the year.
And I feel like the rate of that getting more popular is maybe higher than Christmas, because Christmas is pretty much well established. So hopefully those numbers.
Halloween's growing, but you don't have to give presents to your entire family at Halloween. So
there we go.
Candy's a little cheaper.
That's good. Thank goodness, right? But the one thing that is new, I think, especially this year, I see a lot of these gigantic monsters in their front yard, like skeletons.
Like $200-300 a crack.
That's right.
I just don't understand that.
The macabre, skeletons, like things coming out of the ground. Mm-hmm. So obviously, I'm not for that. To me, that's not a gray area. To me, that is unchristian. I'm just going to say it out, outright. What do you think about that, guys? I mean, even in the most liberal sense, where maybe we're thinning that gray area, but do you think there's any room for the macabre?
I think what's happening in our culture is, with any issue, not just this, is that we are trying to actually remove or blur the lines between good and evil. And I think if our depiction of these things signifies only the evil side of it and not the victorious side of it through Christ Jesus, I think there's a huge problem, no matter what we are doing, how we're expressing that. So I think we need to be very careful about that. At the same time, do we want to live we already live in a culture where death is so much being promoted. Talk about politics today. I mean, that's a major thing that we're talking about, whether you're pro-life or pro-choice and all those things. So when you are faced with that, I think as Christians, we have a moral responsibility that we promote more life and do it in a way that which basically amplifies the beauty of the holiness of God. And how do we do that? I think church has to get together. And as you said, one of the challenges that we have is that we don't have a unified front. We are so divided. Even on this matter, we don't have a clarity. And in the midst of that, I think we have to make sure that we do things in a way that honors God and also serves our neighbor in a way. We don't want to give an opportunity to actually undermine someone's conscience or affect someone's conscience. We have to be very careful about that in doing whatever we do.
Yeah.
So two passages come to mind. First of all is Acts 15, because the early church had a problem. It's like, what do we do with these Gentiles and all the stuff that they do, all the holidays, the way they express their culture and things like that. And the first council in Jerusalem comes out with basically 4 ideas, right? Abstain from things contaminated by idols, from fornication, and from things strangled, and from blood. And other than that, you could be okay. Now, if you were a Jew and you walk into a Gentile love feast, a Christian service, right, that had other Jewish people in there and they're eating non-kosher things, you may be offended at that. And that's a problem. Now, and on even this pronouncement, it gets modified, because in Romans 14, we read that idols have no power, right? And the Corinthian church had this question. And Paul says in 1 Corinthians 10, like, look, you can eat anything sold in the meat market. Just don't ask any questions for your conscience sake, because we know that there's no such thing as these idols are just, wood and stone. They don't matter.
They don't do anything.
But he does give a caveat. If you have an unbeliever who's weaker and says, wow, well, you're eating something that's sacrificed to idols. Paul says, I'd spit the meat out of my mouth and I'd never eat it again if I knew that was going to trip him up. Yeah. So we have a freedom in Christ, but that freedom is always balanced against our responsibility to our fellow Christian. Right. That doesn't mean that a person who's going to bludgeon us with it should always win, because that's a different motivation. It's a person who's going to stumble because of it, and that's the difference.
And there's no need to undermine creativity. As Christians, we should be more creative when it comes to these things, and do it in a way that it promotes goodness, truth, and beauty. Yeah,
goodness, and that's the thing, because it's not just the scary, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't let my kid dress up as a pregnant nun, or all of these kinds of. I don't even think that it's proper to maybe dress up as the president of the United States, because what you're doing is you're mocking another individual. And maybe we want to show that we have a higher regard for those who bear God's image than that. And we can explain that kind of thing. So even in those aspects, you've got to be careful. But there are,
I'm of the view that let's call it a Reformation Day. Just promote that.
There you go.
And what happened?
Yeah. Now I'm curious. I know, Jacob, you're a leader at your church. What do you guys have? Harvest Fest or trunk or treats, or do you guys have like safe alternatives for the kids?
We haven't had during Halloween time, but we have had other occasions where we do have events where we gather together and fellowship. So, but not on particular
So no
this time.
alternatives.
No alternatives. Yeah.
Okay.
Not at our church, but I know of churches that they do.
Yeah.
They have Harvest Festival where they invite the community people, just come together and be part of what they're doing.
Yeah.
So
How about you, Lenny, at your church? Do you guys do anything special?
Well, yeah, everybody comes over to my house. that's
I'll
what
take
we
note
do.
of that. Go to Lenny's house.
And we pass out 600 to 800 candy bars.
maybe
every
this
year.
time
That's
you'll
what-
have
that's what-
thousands of people. All our
Here's
listeners will be
another
at your
thing.
door.
And if you're really worried about this, here's something that you can do. Halloween is a wonderful time of year to remember to pray for those who are caught in the occult.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
I mean, we talk about redeeming the time. Here, it's like at your door. Okay, if it bothers you, are you praying for those individuals because they have been captured by the prince of this world, by the liar? So, I think that's a really good way to kind of tickle the back of your mind and say,
Yeah.
hey, this is something that we actually need to call on God
Yeah,
to do for us.
that is good. Let's say you have an event at church and people are wearing costumes. It's that kind of an event. And you're an elder, you're a deacon, you're a leader at the church. And you spot people that are wearing the demonic, the macabre, the gross.
Or even the sexy nurse
there you go.
kind of
Those
thing.
kinds of things. Yeah. How do you guys, remember I said you're the leader. You represent the church. What do you say? What do you say something to the kid or to their parents, or what? How do you handle that? I'm curious.
I think, first of all, the church gathering is for the believers to come together. There's a decorum that we maintain, the order that we maintain in worship. So that wouldn't be a place where such a thing would happen, first of all.
No, it happens. It
happens, but
it
what I'm
depends
saying,
on-
as an elder at my church, I'm like,
If you
in
have
my
a-
opinion,
Yeah.
it shouldn't.
That's right. But what if it does?
So if you have a festival that's open to the public, that's a different
right.
story, right? And
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
something that come one, come all, and you're going to get non-believers there.
Yeah.
So that's, I think that situation is slightly different.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't know that you want to chastise someone who just wouldn't know. But if it's too revealing or something like that, again, is it going to trip people up? Let's pull them aside.
And
talk
I
to
think
them
as
about it.
church, we have the responsibility to set the standard.
Yeah.
For people to know as to where we stand on these matters. So maybe that might be a way for us to, maybe if you're bringing in people and giving them this opportunity to maybe dress up, you can always mention that in the flyer, that, maintain these standards that we respect in our church.
Right. Okay. Because remember, I was playing devil's advocate
Yes.
a while ago, and I made up this term, making the case for the naive celebrator. Is there such a thing? Like, again, it might be for them just a cultural thing, and then they think it's perfectly acceptable just because everyone's doing it, and it might be fun in their own standards, but they've not taken the a level higher to think about what they're really representing, right? So again, I like Philippians 4:8. I think that's a general rule to follow. So the verse says, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence," or you can interpret that as like, since there are things that are excellent, if there is anything worthy of praise, and there are, think about these things.
Yes.
That's a good matrix.
Amen.
It's almost like a sorting hat, right? I put everything there. Does it meet the criteria? If it's not, well, just chuck it.
And we got to remember every time that we are ambassadors of a kingdom, of a king. We are representing Christ, and we would, when we represent him, there's a way to do it, and we do it in a way that honors our king.
Yeah. But I like the whole, let's just change it to Reformation Day. How about we do that?
Yeah, and we haven't even talked about, we're in LA, large Hispanic population, the Dia de Muertos, right? The Day of the Dead that happens November 1st and 2nd is very much similar to what we're talking about. But do we admonish our, Hispanic brethren because they have this tradition within their culture? Do we instantly
Is that tied
castigate
to Roman
them as,
Catholicism or just purely cultural?
I think it's just purely cultural.
Okay.
It's primarily a Mexican holiday but again, many cultures have it. So it asks this question. I would say if somebody were to walk into, an event that we were having dressed as a demon, my first reaction would be to stand back and watch how many of my churchgoers would be immediately witnessing to that individual. I mean, it would be an obvious flag to say, hey, here's somebody who needs to hear about Jesus. And that's pretty much how most of my church would respond in that regard.
All right, Lenny, you have the last word. Thank you for that. So you've been listening to Apologetics.com radio, where we challenge believers to think and thinkers to believe. Our hope is that you've learned some aspect about the Christian worldview that strengthens your faith and make you want to learn more. So special thanks to my panel this evening, Jacob and Lenny, and to our intrepid engineer back there. Special thank you to your listeners. Until next time, good night.
Thank you for watching this Come Reason video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see more videos like these, consider subscribing to our Come Reason YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button. And you can follow us on social media. Lastly, if you'd like to help keep these kinds of videos free, consider providing a donation by clicking on the donation button beside me. Thank you.